Hello everyone and welcome back to I Am A Reviews. Today we're having a bit of a catch up with some of the movies that I missed whilst I was putting together this new set. And let's kick things off with Late Night with the Devil, starring David Dastmalchian. This is very much inspired by things like Ghostwatch, if you've seen that, the BBC horror show with Michael Parkinson back in the day, where it is a 70s themed chat show in America set on Halloween night, where the chat show are going to do some spooky stuff. But in typical horror fashion, it isn't going to go exactly as planned. You know me, I like a good horror as much as the next guy, and I did find this to be quite the pleasant surprise. I think they really do capture that 70s feeling and chat show vibe perfectly. And David Dastmalchian serves the role as the host fantastically. He feels like a real natural fit. I really do like him as an actor, and I think this is just another great role for him to add to his CV. I don't think everybody else is giving quite the same level of performance, but nobody is really hamming it up and letting the side down too much. The story is interesting enough, it did keep me gripped and hanging in there. I wanted to know where it was going. And the biggest praise that I can give Late Night with the Devil is that as somebody who watches an awful lot of horror, it does take quite a lot to genuinely scare me or make the hairs on my neck stand up. It doesn't happen often. I think the last film to do it was possibly Terrifier or Terrifier 2, and I mean, how couldn't it? It's so over the top. But actually, Late Night with the Devil, in a very quick blink and you'll miss it scene, did make the hairs on my neck stand up. But it doesn't go without some issues either, unfortunately. Without spoiling the story for you, there are these times where we go behind the scenes and see what's happening backstage, and it just pulled me out of the movie personally. It seems to change its tone and its style a little bit too much, and for too little reason. Some of these scenes feel quite irrelevant at times. And I also think the ending is a bit of a mess, if I'm being honest. It feels as if they don't know how to end, so they just sort of throw everything at the wall and hope for the best. But I would gladly rewatch this again in a Halloween or two's time. So I'm going to give Late Night with the Devil a 7 out of 10. It's probably nearer to the 6 than it is the 8, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. Next up was Challengers, starring Zendaya and directed by Luca Guadagnino. Challengers tells the competitive story of two former tennis teammates who fall in love with the same girl. I'm very mixed on this one, if I'm being honest. I went in with some expectations because a lot of critics that I personally really revere and respect had quite the positive outcome on it. They really liked it. The trailer didn't do anything for me personally, but I do trust these critics. And sadly, I have to say I walked out quite disappointed and underwhelmed by it. There are aspects of the movie that I can appreciate, but I far from love it. I do think the actors are doing a fantastic job, and I do even appreciate the way these characters are written. There is a depth and something complicated and interesting about each and every one of them. And as someone who is a little bit sick and tired of seeing Zendaya just everywhere at the moment, I do think this was a good role for her. It was complicated and far more challenging, and it let her flex her dramatic muscles much more than something like Spider-Man does. I also thought it was fairly well paced. I didn't get too overly annoyed with its timekeeping, and I really appreciated several scenes the way the film was shot, especially in the action of the tennis. If there was any CGI involved in these moments, it might be on the tennis ball, but even then it's moving so quickly and it's edited so nicely that actually it's too quick to tell. It just looks authentic. But where my issues pop up with this movie is that, first of all, the big one, the soundtrack. My good friend Mike at Did You See That also brought it up in his review, and I couldn't agree more. This soundtrack is baffling. Not only is it really repetitive and it's constantly of like a Berlin clubhouse, but it just doesn't feel tonally correct, to be honest with you. Not for every scene. Some of the sports scenes I kind of get it, but other aspects I don't think it fits at all. And it does seem to just come in out of nowhere. At least for me, it's definitely a competitor for worst soundtrack of 2024 so far. And frankly, I found the story to be a little bit underwhelming. As much as I did enjoy the complexity of the characters, it didn't really do anything that surprised me. It did ultimately end up exactly where I thought it would because of the scenario it is. Personally, I'm going to give Challengers a 4 out of 10. But if you liked it, please don't be disheartened by my review. In fact, tell me why I'm wrong in the comment sections. Remember, it's called IMO for a reason. It's just my opinion. And finally, I was lucky enough to catch a screening for the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. This is another outing by Guy Ritchie. It has been marketed terribly. I remember seeing the trailer for this ages ago and I completely forgot it was coming out. And it seems to be having very scattered releases as far as I can see so far. But to be brutally honest with you, at least in my opinion, you're not really missing much with this one. But then again, I do generally struggle to get on with Guy Ritchie. I think Lock, Stock and Snatch are okay, but apart from that, it's a pretty barren wasteland. It's not entirely without merit. I do actually like the cast here. I forget his name. Thad Castle from BMS, Blue Mountain State. He's great, and it's really good to see him here. And I think he has some very good camaraderie with Henry Cavill. Some of the action is okay. It's bordering a little bit on generic at times. It doesn't do anything to really blow your socks off. And I think that's genuinely just the major issue with this movie. It does constantly border on the line of generic. You will feel like you've seen it before in many other iterations. It's yet another World War II secret mission movie. And it is genuinely based on real history, but it doesn't give it that much limelight, unfortunately. A lot of the same Guy Ritchie-isms that I take issue with still appear here, unfortunately. It's all very hammy at times, and they're all sort of playing it up for comedy when it really shouldn't be at times. It should be far more straight-laced and serious. Guy Ritchie is still absolutely convinced that he is the British Tarantino when it comes to dialogue, and he just isn't. It's not great. For me, at least, it just comes across as forgettable. It didn't annoy me, it didn't bore me to death, but I'm really not going to remember this anytime soon. So I'm going to give the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare a 3 out of 10. Thanks for watching this review. Please be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that comment section as well. Have you seen any of the movies we've discussed today? What did you think about them? Let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you haven't had enough of this crazy ginger, we can always click on these suggested videos right here and get yourself lost in an IMO wormhole. But if not, take care, and I look forward to seeing you on the next review.